Brilliance Audio presents The Monastery Murders by E.M. Powell, performed by James Langton. Fairmore Abbey, North Yorkshire, 24th December 1176. As a young man, Brother Maurice, novice master at Fairmore Abbey, had wondered why the old always seemed so ill-tempered. He wondered no more, had not wondered, in fact, for several years. Years which had taken his teeth, of which he had few now left, which had taken his sight, completely in one eye, and with the same foul fog descending upon the other. Years which had taken his mother and father, which he supposed was the way of things. Years which had taken many of his fellow monks too. Some had died after a long life, like his parents, while others had been called back to God after only a short time. The number of years mattered little. He could look into the dead face of a man he'd known for 2 decades and feel nothing. He could hold the man of a man he had only known a few months as he slipped from this life and weep for days at his passing to heaven. The prospect of his own death did not cause him any woe, though he hastened towards it daily, for when it came he would sleep properly. Lack of rest, Maurice had long since concluded, was what made those advanced in years so quick to wrath. He would long for sleep throughout the day, have his head droop over and over as he prayed in the cloister, his slack mouth drooling onto the book that his useless eyes could no longer see. After the bell sounded for close of day, he would hasten to his sleeping mat in the monk's dormitory, the mat that currently lay under his wretched, sleepless bones. An hour, maybe 2, would see him in blissful repose. And then he would wake, not as he did as a young man, refreshed and restored, but in despair, for he knew he would not close an eye again that night. At least on this night, this most holy of nights, others would have as little sleep as him, for the great feast of the birth of Christ was almost upon them. The night office of vigils would take place earlier than usual. He loved this feast above any other, even if it served to remind him of how few he may have left. In the cold darkness of the dormitory around him, the other brothers slept on in their familiar maddening chorus of loud snores, sharp snorts, bubbling breaths, and farted wind. When the monastery bells sounded for vigils, he would be up in an instant. For him, rising in the depth of the night was easy. He was already awake. For the others, the sleepers, especially the novices under his care, young men all, it was a sort of agony. Maurice grinned to himself. At least he had that advantage over the young. He had little else any more. He rubbed his face, listening out for the muffled sounds of the awakening of the sacrist, Brother Cuthbert, who slept in a separate chamber at the top of the dormitory. The quiet sacrist was a diligent man, never late in his duties at the monastery bells, a boring fellow too, but dependable. It should be any time now. Maurice waited a few more minutes. Nothing. Only the continued sounds of slumber around him. He frowned to himself and sat up, pushing his coverlet from him. This would not do, not on the feast of Christmas, not on any night. He rose from his bed, pulling his wooden cowl straight and smoothing out its creases as he slipped his stockinged feet into his waiting soft leather shoes. Then he made his way along the clear path between the 2 rows of beds towards Cuthbert's little room. His poor sight deepened the room's shadows, but he had no fear of falling. The floor would be tidy and without obstruction, as it always was. He reached Cuthbert's door and opened it without ceremony. "Cuthbert!" His order was sharp enough to cause a few grumbles from those monks nearby. He peered closer. Cuthbert's bed lay empty, the coverlet rumpled. By the Virgin! Had he, Maurice, missed the bell? Have sense, man. Of course he hadn't. Every other brother was still asleep. The deep peals to summon the monastery to prayer had not sounded. Maurice made his way over to the tiny shuttered window and pushed it open. The icy wind that gusted in made him gasp.